Economic mobility. It's the ability of an individual, family, or group to improve their income or economic status over time. It reduces poverty and helps to build thriving economies. Today, we're talking about how to increase the economic mobility of Bahamians, specifically those who don't have a college degree and those who are pursuing a career in the arts. Keep watching. You and Your Money starts now.
You and Your Money is brought to you by Phone Call, Nassau Agencies, Sun Oil, and the Insurance Commission.
Welcome to You and Your Money, everyone. Joining me today is Dr. Peter Blair, Assistant Professor in the Graduate School of Education at Harvard University. Dr. Blair is also the Principal Investigator of the B Lab, a research group that focuses on the future of work and education, as well as the labor market discrimination, among other related issues. Dr. Blair has conducted significant research on the U.S. labor market that has led to impactful initiatives that perhaps can be applied here in the Bahamas to increase economic mobility in our nation's workforce. Dr. Peter Blair, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ria, and good day, Bahamas.
Talk about your research on the potential economic mobility for workers without a college degree.
Yeah, thanks so much for that question, Ria. I want to step a bit back and just talk about the importance of skills for the labor market. When you go back to the work of Gary Becker, who is a seminal economist from the University of Chicago, one of the things that he said is that education is a form of human capital. When economists typically think about capital, they think about it as something that makes your labor more productive. So for example, most of you have iPhones or Androids. That helps you to be a lot more productive at work because you can catch an email on the go, you can call somebody as you're in transit, and in the same way that physical capital helps to make a worker's labor more productive, human capital or educational skills makes a worker a lot more productive. And so I've been engaged with research in coordination with a nonprofit in Washington, D.C. called Opportunity at Work, looking at a population of workers who don't have college degrees, who are skilled through their experience. They've acquired these skills through working on the job. And we call these workers stars because they're skilled through alternative routes.
Now, can you share some examples of the occupations that you found that could be performed by people with the same skills but who have different educational backgrounds?
100%. So in the United States labor market, where I've spent a lot of time studying and understanding, about 60% of workers do not have college degrees. Let me say that again, 60%. Wow. But when we think about most job postings, you will see bachelor's degree required. And so what does that mean? From the jump, close to 60% of workers are being excluded from consideration for these jobs. What's surprising is something that my colleague Joe Fuller at the Harvard Business School documented, which is called degree inflation. And so you can have the same job that a few years ago did not require a college degree, now has a college degree in the job description. And so in the same way that you're experiencing inflation when you go in super value and you see that the price of bread was $5, a week ago, and then this week it's $5.10, it's the same thing that's happening with degrees, where there are more and more jobs that are requiring degrees. And so what this effectively does is it excludes certain workers from having access to those jobs when in fact those workers might have the skills for that work. And so to give you an example of that, let's take a triage nurse. So you go to Princess Margaret Hospital, and as you're coming into the emergency room, this person has to direct doctors, they have to direct patients to say this person's coming in, this bed is available, and so on and so forth. What are the skills that are needed for that? You need somebody that can take a lot of input from a lot of different directions and who can coordinate and speak with a nice loud voice to command people to move in various directions, right? And so someone who might have those skills is someone who runs the drive-thru at Wendy's. Because that person has to say, okay, we need some fries for this order, we need this for that. Okay, can you please bring the ketchup, X, Y, Z. They're taking in cash, they're taking in orders, they're speaking to the manager, they're speaking to the person on the floor. We need more chicken wings. Not chicken wings, because this is Wendy's. We need more chicken sandwiches, we need more hamburgers. And so it's the exact same set of processes that are at work in that particular function that could be useful for a hospital. But somebody who's looking for somebody to help with directing their emergency unit, they may never think to go and look at somebody who did not complete college, but who has years of experience running the drive-thru at Wendy's, when it's precisely that person who has very related skills that could be translated into that job.
You know, this is where we talk about the transferable skills, and so many places or so many workplaces, they don't even consider what are those transferable skills that can actually help someone to be successful in their role. Now, as an op-ed, you co-wrote that what was called or published in the Wall Street Journal that led to an initiative called the 110 Initiative. What is this initiative?
Historically, black people in America were excluded from higher education. People of my mom's generation were some of the first people to go to schools like Duke, where I went to school. And these are schools that existed for hundreds of years. And so when you put a degree requirement in there, effectively, you're closing the door to a lot of workers, but disproportionately to workers of color. And so we made that argument. And then we came up with a set of concrete suggestions that business leaders could do by hiring based on skills and not degrees. And this was work that was done in concert with a nonprofit in Washington, D.C., Opportunity at Work, and one of my colleagues there, 𝗖𝗛𝗡𝗧𝗪. And in response to this op-ed, and in response to a lot of things that were happening in the culture, you had 70 Fortune 500 companies commit to hiring 1 million black workers who are stars, who don't have college degrees, over the next 10 years. So that was the first thing. The federal government then issued an executive order saying that they would hire based on skills and not degrees. And this isn't to say that degrees are unimportant, but this is saying that you want to consider people based on their skills even if they don't have college degrees. And you're still going to consider people with college degrees. The third thing that happened was that the state of Maryland followed suit and said that they would in turn also open up job pathways to a lot of workers who are stars. And the fourth thing that happened very recently is that the National Ad Council, which is responsible for public service announcements across the entire United States, they committed to adopting STARS as their initiative for the next 2 years. And so what that means is that there are going to be nationally televised ads encouraging business leaders to tear the paper ceiling, which is that invisible ceiling where if somebody has the skills but not the degree, they can't progress beyond that. Very analogous to the glass ceiling that women have for a very long time faced in the labor market. And so you're going to see ads televised nationally across the US. When you go into the subways, you're going to see them plastered across the subways. And this is huge because these are the same folks that said, you know, say no to drugs, buckle up at 𝗖𝗧. So if you've seen those campaigns, this is going to be a campaign of a similar magnitude to that.
Seems like a very successful initiative, and I know it's going to take a lot of rewiring, even in terms of the way people think or how they perceive, even for those persons or individuals who even as they present themselves, even when you think about the resume and how they even structure it. Now, how do you as an educator find the balance between promoting the importance of higher education and supporting campaigns like Tear the Paper Ceiling that rewire how people view and value higher education?
I think that's a critical question, Ria, because someone can look at me and say, well, Peter, here you are, someone with a PhD who has gone to the University of the Bahamas, Duke, Harvard, Wharton, you've taught at Clemson, and you're saying to people that we need to focus on skills rather than degrees. Is this a bit ironic? And I say no. When we look at most people who are working in the labor market today in the United States, in the Bahamas, in the UK, in the African continent, most of them do not have college degrees. Think about your own family, your brother, your sister, your mom, your auntie, your grandmother. Many of them don't have college degrees, and ask yourself, when you look at them, they are stars, and you think about them as incredibly skillful people, and you want them to be received in the labor market for the skills that they possess, even if they don't have the paper, and that's what the STARS campaign is saying. We still want to make sure that college is a pathway for folks who can afford it in terms of the time and the monetary investment, but for folks who may not be able to afford it, or for folks who may have missed that particular moment in their career, they should not be consigned to a place of permanent inferiority within the labor market. The reality is most of us learn on the job. I'm a college professor, and by vocation I teach. I was not taught to teach when I was doing my PhD. Shh, don't tell anybody. I learned how to teach when I appeared at Clemson University for my very first job, and they said, Peter, we want you to teach PhD students. And these were people in their second to fifth year of their PhD. And so I got the privilege of learning on the job. I had colleagues who coached me. I had colleagues who looked at my syllabi. And what I'm saying is the same opportunities that we give to lawyers who may not know how to write briefs when they're in law school, but who learn that when they get to firms. We want to give those opportunities to that person who may have completed high school, even if they don't have a BCSC, because we believe that whereas you may not have a college degree, you still have the capacity to learn, and that workplaces should be places of both earning and learning, and that those things can happen throughout somebody's career.
I love it, earning and learning the same time. Dr. Blair, this is such a necessary conversation, but we have to take a quick break, and we have much more to talk about when we get back. This is You and Your Money. We'll be right back.
Since 1967, Freeport Oil Company Limited has been dedicated to fueling growth and prosperity in the Bahamas. We have been a constant pillar within the country, striving to invest and support our community through the best of times and the worst of times. For us, Full Call represents 21 years of strength and consistency, consistent leadership, consistent growth, consistent customer service. Through it all, we are resilient. Full Call, fueling growth for people.
Shell Unleaded improves your fuel economy, giving increased miles per gallon, allowing you to do more of what you really want. Special additives used in Shell Unleaded improve your engine's efficiency. So go further with Shell Unleaded. Venture out to beaches, junkanoo, and festivals and bring home memories that will last a lifetime. Shell, fueling journeys that matter.
𝗪𝗧 Agencies Limited is pleased to announce that we are in compliance with the new Price Control Drugs Amendment Regulations 2022. We continue to cooperate with the government as they seek to bring economic relief to our citizens and residents. 𝗪𝗧 Agencies Limited, distributors of Nature's Bounty vitamins and minerals, nutritionals Ensure, Glucerna, beef disinfectant spray, bark insect sprays, prescription drugs, and health and beauty aids. 𝗪𝗧 Agencies Limited, your quality assured pharmaceutical wholesaler.
Welcome back to You and Your Money. Dr. Peter Blair, Assistant Professor in the Graduate School of Education at Harvard University, is still with us. Before the break, he spoke about the movement that's happening in the U.S. where skills-based hiring is on the rise, resulting in an increase in the economic mobility of workers without a college degree. The movement is called STARS, Skilled Through Alternative Routes. Dr. Blair, can you talk to us about how a focus on skilled-based hiring can benefit the Bahamian economy?
Ria, I think this is crucial for the Bahamian economy. At the moment, we face a situation where a lot of our students are graduating even from high school without the 5 BGCSEs that they need to enter the University of the Bahamas. And entering the University of the Bahamas now is free if you have those credentials. And so there's a bit of a disconnect where we have the facility in place for people to get a college education for free, but a lot of folks are not qualified based on what happened in their high school. And so what's going to happen to those workers? What's going to happen to the investment that we're putting in the University of the Bahamas? And we have to think crucially about how do we make sure that people who are not able to go to college, whether it's for it's not financial reasons in our country, it's really because from an educational standpoint, they've not been able to meet the standard. How do we make sure that they're still integrated into the economy? And there are lots of amazing things that they can do. There are lots of amazing things that they can learn. And I think by focusing on recognizing them as stars, we are reconceptualizing what they are capable of doing.
I think you talked about the University of the Bahamas, but there are also a lot of Bahamians who return home after college and they have the difficulty finding a job right away. How do we give workers who do not have college degrees more access to higher paying jobs without crowding out workers with college degrees?
That is the fundamental question. I think whenever we talk about stars, there's always a sense in which there's a competing tension between stars and workers with college degrees. The reality is, over the past century, we've seen the proportion of people with college degrees has increased dramatically, not just in the Bahamas, but across the world. And the economy has expanded. The more that we can tap into someone's human potential, the more opportunities there are for everyone. I want to tell you about a couple of folks who are stars. Mark Zuckerberg, who founded Facebook, and Mark was admitted as a student at Harvard. In fact, Mark lived in Kirkland House, which is the house where I'm a faculty in residence at Harvard. Mark dropped out of Harvard. Mark does not have a college degree. Mark is a star. Mark created Facebook. Facebook is on your phone. Facebook is a $1 trillion company that's employing many, many people with college degrees. And so stars can create companies that can employ people with college degrees. And so we shouldn't think about this as a zero-sum game. We should really think about this as what we're doing is we're seeing people the way that God sees them, and we're saying that just because you don't have a college degree does not mean that you don't have skills. And if I can give you an opportunity to activate those skills, you may create jobs for people with college degrees. And I think that the crisis that many of our young educated Bahamians face when they come home with their degrees is real. And I want to speak for a moment to that as someone who myself faced that. When I graduated from Duke University, I wanted to come to the Bahamas and teach. I wanted to be a physics teacher. And so what did I do? I went on the Ministry of Education's website and I looked and I said, how can I become a physics teacher? Well, I needed a teacher certificate. And so although I had a bachelor's degree in physics from Duke University, I had done undergraduate coursework at then the College of the Bahamas, and I had won numerous awards for my work as a physicist. I was not qualified to teach in the Bahamas. So think about that. There are lots of structural things that we can do to create clearer pathways for our students who have college degrees for reintegrating the labor market.
There's so much more that can be unraveled with that one response. But how can job seekers identify transferable skills that can be added to their resume when applying for jobs they may not necessarily be qualified for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that this is a data question, and this is perhaps where the Department of Statistics can play a critical role. In the US context, the Department of Labor has categorized each occupation in the United States based on 35 skills, from active listening to problem solving. And each job is rated on a scale from 1 to 5 in terms of how important that skill is for that job. I think we should adopt something like that in the Bahamas, where we have each job classified based on what the skill content is. And once you have that, you can look at this entire vector of all of these skills for a given job. So for example, my friend Dr. Dion is a musician, and we can look and we can say, well, that requires problem solving, complex thinking, and any active listening. And then we can begin to see, well, what are some of the other jobs in the Bahamian labor market have those same skills? And we can then identify jobs where the skills are adjacent and say this worker who is a star, or even if it's someone who has a college degree, has these particular skills for this job, but here's a higher wage job where the skills are related. Can we give that person an opportunity? And this should not only be on the worker, but I think the business community, the Chamber of Commerce, I think large employers within the country, so for example our hotels, they can also begin to think about how do they map out the skills that someone needs, from being a housekeeper to a croupier to a manager to someone that is in client services, and begin to create an internal economic mobility system for their workers who are coming in from their frontline workers all the way up to the managerial positions within their company.
Dr. Blair, this has definitely been a very, very rewarding conversation. How can viewers follow your work and get in touch with you?
Sure. So if you're on Twitter, you can follow me. My Twitter handle is @PQBLAIR. So again, that's @PQBLAIR. You can also reach out to me through my website. It's www.peter.blair.com. Again, that's peterqblair.com, to follow the research, to just hit the contact me page, and also to come up to Boston. Come visit me at Harvard if you're in town. I know that there are going to be some students from various schools coming to a Model United Nations event there. I'm also going to be out at Stanford this year, so if you're Bahamian and you're coming out to the West Coast, please reach out. Or if you know Bahamians who are in these areas, I'm happy to be a resource for them too.
Dr. Blair, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Rian. Thank you, Bahamas.
So coming up next, I'll be sitting down with a Bahamian performing artist to talk about the viability of a career in music. Is there an opportunity for economic mobility for Bahamians in this sector? We'll find out after the break. You're watching You and Your Money. We'll be right back.
Nassau Agencies Limited is pleased to announce that we are in compliance with the new Price Controlled Drugs Amendment Regulations 2022. We continue to cooperate with the government as they seek to bring economic relief to our citizens and residents. Nassau Agencies Limited, distributors of Nature's Bounty vitamins and minerals, nutritionals Ensure, glucerina, beef disinfectant spray, bark insect sprays, prescription drugs, and health and beauty aids. Nassau Agencies Limited, your quality assured pharmaceutical wholesaler.
Samantha's always on point. She doesn't miss a thing. When she signs up for any insurance policy, she reads all the fine print. She knows what's covered, what's not covered, and she's aware of her deductibles. When it comes to insurance, it pays to know your policy. Review every insurance policy so you know what you're covered for. This message was brought to you by the Insurance Commission of the Bahamas.
Since 1967, Freeport Oil Company Limited has been dedicated to fueling growth and prosperity in the Bahamas. We have been a constant pillar within the country, striving to invest and support our community through the best of times and the worst of times. For us, 𝗖𝗛𝗡𝗘𝗥 represents 21 years of strength and consistency, consistent leadership, consistent growth, consistent customer service. Through it all, we are resilient. 𝗖𝗛𝗡𝗥, fueling growth for people.
Welcome back to You and Your Money. Dr. Dion Cunningham is an accomplished performing artist and educator who hopes to inspire individuals from non-traditional backgrounds to pursue careers in music. He's here today to talk about the viability of a career in music for Bahamians. Dr. Cunningham, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, talk to us about your career journey. How did you go from piano lessons here in Nassau to performances throughout North and South America and the Caribbean?
So I love answering this question. I have to take you back to when I was about 5 years old, and my mother and I guess the whole family, we were attending a service at Blue Hill Gospel Chapel, and we saw a wonderful lady by the name of Dawn Sands just tearing up the piano. And my mother said, "You need to teach my son." This is her talking to Mrs. Sands, and Mrs. Sands at the time was not, even though she was a very good performer, she was not a teacher. And due to my mother's persistence, she took me on as her first student. And there are two other inspirations that I will say really affected me in terms of my trajectory. And those two inspirations were Francis Fox and Mr. Lee Callender. Both of these men, I saw them as inspirations because at the time, they would be performing in tape segments on ZNS television. And so when I saw these two black Bahamian men doing this amazing art form, I said, I just have to do that. I just have to do that one day. And thankfully, it's worked out so far.
Going off to college to study music seems to open a lot of doors for Bahamians who are succeeding in this arena. Is studying music at the collegiate level a critical step in achieving a successful career in music?
The answer is yes and no. Why do I say yes? One of the things that we have access to once we leave the borders of this country and go off to the universities or the conservatories of the world is access to training. I will use myself as an example. Even though I had been trained since I was 6 years old, all the way through my high school days, it was only when I got to Macalester College that I got the opportunity to play on my first concert grand. Now listen to that, I'm being exposed to a concert grand at age 18. And then I understood something. I didn't know how to play the piano. Not really. And so what a university education afforded me is what it affords many in my, in not just music, but across the art forms, is access to facilities and access to training at the highest level. The second thing I believe that a college education affords those that decide to pursue training in that route is exposure. One of the benefits of being abroad as you continue to develop your art form is that you are exposed to not just the university environment, but also to the industry as well. That is not something that we have here. And that in itself leads to opportunities for you that last beyond just studying music or studying the art form at the college level. I can say that many of my opportunities that I've been afforded as a musician came as a result of me being in the Twin Cities, being in Chicago, being in Baltimore, being in the DC, Maryland area. And that I could not have achieved if I did not go off to school. So the training piece and the exposure piece was critical. Now I also said no. Why is it not necessarily a critical step? In the last 20 years, we've had the advent of not only Facebook, but we've also had the advent of platforms like YouTube, Instagram. And so here affords the musicians and artistic community in our community the rare opportunity to present themselves and curate their presentations for a world audience. And that does not require a university education at all. So there are so many artists that we can point to who got their start on YouTube. I will tell you, in the pianistic world, there's a famous Russian pianist. Her name is Valentina Lisitsa. She was not known as a concertizing musician until she started posting videos of herself playing the world's best repertoire on YouTube. And that has led to a career. So I would say from the exposure piece, you don't necessarily need to go off to school to achieve a successful career, because one can create their own experiences using the platforms that we have today in the 21st century. However, I will say that the training piece is still a critical part of one's education. But even there, one could say YouTube is also a university.
How can support for music and the arts improve here in the Bahamas?
So I'll use myself as an, I'll talk about my upbringing and what are some of the things that I wish that I had had as a child. So I started music at 6 years old. But a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old in another community would have the opportunity not only to perfect their craft under good teaching, which we have in this country, but also platforms on which to present themselves to the public. We don't yet have those platforms outside of one platform, the National Arts Festival, where we can present the burgeoning genius talent of our elementary school students. And within that is an opportunity. If we have somebody, and this is a challenge to my artistic community, if somebody in the dance world says, I'm going to create an opportunity, a platform for young dancers to present their craft, that becomes a business. That becomes an institution. If somebody decides, okay, I'm going to do that for pianists, I'm going to do that for violinists, I'm going to do that for actors, and suddenly you grow from having nothing for a certain age group to present themselves so artistically, you provide an opportunity for them to present themselves on a national platform, and by extension, those who run those organizations now turn those into businesses. Now, I didn't have that opportunity to start performing for a public until I was in high school, which by the time someone's in high school in another community, they would have already done their first recitals, they would have already done their first mini tours. And in our country, we think, whoa, at 8, 9? No, absolutely. That's commonplace in countries like the United States and China and others, and they're no more talented than us. I'm living proof of that. But here is the other piece. As a high school student, I would have been afforded, if I was born in another country, to have a festival experience. What is a festival experience? A festival experience is where myself as a young talent are connected with people who are involved in the industry on the international stage. That is common practice in other countries. Myself, I did not get the opportunity to attend a festival until I was 26 years old. And I am no longer 26, even though I still look like it. But I want to say that herein lies another opportunity. Who are the Bahamian musicians, dancers, and visual artists who are providing those festivals so that our burgeoning talent can connect with those on the global level? So those are the kinds of things that I would like to see, and within those lies opportunities for enterprise.
Dion, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing so much information with us.
Thank you so much, Rhea, for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for watching today's episode of You and Your Money. Don't forget to follow You and Your Money on social media and tune in next week for a brand new episode. I'm Ria Christina. See you next time.